You are listening to Woodland Walks, a podcast for the Woodland Trust, presented by Adam Shaw. We protect and plant trees for people to enjoy, to fight climate change and to help wildlife thrive.
Today I am at a site of special scientific interest in the Kent Downs area of outstanding natural beauty, which is teeming with extraordinary wildlife, and I'm told you can stand in the shadows of gnarled veteran trees and even spot some shy dormice, rare bats and woodland wildflowers if you're there at the right time of year. But it is also a site under threat. National Highways propose to build a new tunnel linking Essex and Kent under the River Thames, and many feel that that will create a threat to the trees and wildlife here. So I've come not just for a walk, but to chat to experts, and the first is the man responsible for coordinating the Woodland Trust's response to big infrastructure projects, and to chat to him about how infrastructure and nature can live hand in hand.
So I'm Jack Taylor. I'm the programme lead for the Woods Under Threat team at the Woodland Trust.
Brilliant. And we're at Ashenbank Woods?
We are indeed.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
I know, I should sound more... We are at Ashenbank Woods.
I think its full title might be Ashenbank Woods Triple SI.
Oh, right, yes.
Special Scientific Interest.
Yes, and we're going to see a bit later a colleague of yours, Clive, who will tell us more about the details of this woodland. But the reason why I wanted to talk to you first as we walk through what is a lovely, actually dappled bit of woodland here.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Is about your role in protecting places like this from development. Because, so what is your job?
That's a good question. What is my job? I suppose the basis of it, the foundation really, is about trying to protect ancient woods and ancient veteran trees from forms of development, but also from other threats outside of that as well. So non-development threats like air pollution, pests and diseases, deer overbrowsing. But most of my work does focus on working within the development sector,
right,
and trying to protect against those development threats.
And you're the project lead.
Yeah.
When I first saw that, I thought you meant you're the project lead for this woodland. But you are not. You are the project lead for all development threatening woodlands throughout the UK. This is an extraordinary... I mean, that's quite a job.
Yeah, it's a lot. There are a lot of threats to have to deal with across the UK, because we're always building, we're always sort of growing as a nation. We always need sort of new forms of infrastructure, new sort of housing. We recognise that, but all of that does come with the added impact of having threats on our ancient woods and ancient veteran trees. So we have a team of myself and my wonderful team of 4 as well.
It's not big.
No, it's not big, but they are enthusiastic, and they're great at what they do.
So this is quite a political area, because we've got a new government which has promised to improve lots of things, get the country working, build lots of homes. I think the Prime Minister only recently talked about, we're going to get spades in the ground, we're going to be doing stuff. Well, is it your job to stop all of that? I mean, or how do you balance what needs to be done for the country and what needs to be done to protect woodlands?
Yeah, so none of this is really about stopping development from happening, and we have to be sort of quite clear that that's not what we're set out to do as an organisation. It's about trying to ensure that where development is happening, it's not going to impact on our most important and our most valuable woods and trees, and that's why we do have a focus specifically on ancient woodland, and then also on ancient and veteran trees as well, because we know that for the most part there were lots of really valuable woods and wooded habitats and trees that are plenty sort of valuable and important. But we know that ancient woods and ancient veteran trees are likely to be our most important sites, so we have to focus on protecting those. So we do have to object to some developments where we think the harm is going to be too great, but we're never really looking to stop them from happening unless the harm is too great.
Which way?
I think...
Right.
Right.
Okay. So one of the things I've noticed before, when I was following the HS2 debate, was politicians were going, it's fine, we'll cut this down, we're going to replace them. I tell you what, we'll do you a deal, we'll plant two for everyone we cut down.
Yeah.
On the face of it, that sounds reasonable.
Okay.
Or not.
Not to us.
Why not?
And, well, I think if you're looking at ancient woodlands and ancient veteran trees, you're looking at something that is an irreplaceable habitat. There is no sort of recreating that habitat in one space again once it's been lost. And the reason for that is these things take centuries to evolve and develop, to create those sort of vital links between animals, plants, fungi, the soils as well. So ancient woodland are especially important for their soils. So you can't really just take those soils and put them elsewhere, because once that happens, you completely disturb the relationships that are built up over centuries within them. And ancient and veteran trees, so you're talking about trees that for the most part are going to be centuries years old. How do you replace centuries of development, creating these wonderful sort of niche habitats for different parts of our ecosystems?
And is it, you said quite clearly that it's not your job or the trust's job just to stop development, just to sort of blanket go, hey, stop building. So is it about going, don't build here, or is it about saying, if you're going to build here, this is how to do it with the least amount of impact? What's the sort of your approach?
Yeah, in some cases it is about saying not building here. It depends what we're dealing with, I suppose. So it's different if you're dealing with, say, housing developments or leisure facilities, as opposed to something like rail infrastructure or road infrastructure, which is quite linear in nature. So they can only really go in one place to deliver its purpose.
I see.
Whereas housing is not as locationally dependent.
So you feel you've got a better argument if it's a housing project because you can go put it somewhere else, but the train journey from A to B has to sort of go through this area. You're on a loser there, aren't you?
Well, sometimes, but there are ways of getting around sort of kind of impact. I mean, it doesn't have to go absolutely sort of kind of A to B in one way. You can think very carefully about the design to try and minimise impact on ancient woods. Right. You can also look at alternative solutions, alternative engineering solutions, like tunnelling, for example. Right. So HS2 is a good example of that. The phase 1 section, which is going ahead between London and Birmingham, they actually put in a tunnel under the Chilterns, which saved about 14 hectares of woodland, saved these 3 really good prime areas of ancient woodland. Of course, the Chilterns area of outstanding natural beauty came into that in a way, and they were trying to protect that also. But that was one solution to stop wildlife and nature from being harmed.
So were you involved with that?
Yeah.
Amazing. So how difficult was that to get that project through and try to avoid the destruction of all that woodland? Well,
a lot of destruction still is happening from High Speed 2. So about 20 hectares of ancient woodland has been destroyed at this stage now. A lot of the sort of kind of preparation works for the phase 1 section, that London to Birmingham bit, are now complete. So it was difficult, but the way in which we were involved is we really brought ancient woodland to the table and put it at the forefront of considerations, and gave it a voice, I suppose. It's not that it wasn't being looked at all, but not nearly to the degree that we thought it needed to be looked at. And so we sort of going to introduce that idea of, well, look, there's ancient woodland here, you need to be thinking carefully about your design. And you're talking about halving the impacts on ancient woodlands from our sort of kind of involvement and involvement of other conservation organisations in there as well. So
a lot of it is trying to make the argument, but also to raise the profile of that argument, to bring population and say this is actually a loss. Cutting it down is a loss. So how much harder or easier has it got for you to make that argument? Well,
interestingly, I would probably say that projects like High Speed 2, where there is such a big argument around the ancient woodland, has raised the profile of ancient woodland itself. That's one of the sort of silver linings of that project for us. It puts sort of ancient woodland on the map in terms of a habitat that needs to and is worthy of protection. So I think a lot of people now understand ancient woodland a bit better and what it is. There's still lots of awareness to do. People just think of ancient woodlands as bluebells, big large oaks, and it's not quite there. I mean, they're also kind of varied in their nature and geographically across the country, but it's got people thinking about them.
So that was something of a success, although I know more complicated than just, yes, we won that.
Sure,
Any areas you feel you really lost that keep you up at night, go, that was a failure, and we've lost that woodland?
Yeah, I mean there've been some over the years. Back in 2012, a large quarry was built on an area of woodland called Wood in Kent, probably taking about 30 to 35 hectares of ancient woodland, which is massive amounts. I mean, you're talking about in the region of like 40 to 50 football fields. Right. And we're actually dealing with another threat to that woodland from an expansion of that same quarry. So, that one is one that gnaws at us as we don't want to see that happening anymore.
You're getting more optimistic that the public are more on your side, that this is at least something that plays in policymakers' decisions now?
I actually think the public have always really been on our side. I think if you ask the general public, they would probably say to you, we do not want to see ancient woodland subject to any loss or deterioration, whatever the cause. And I think
you're right, but they also say, but we'd like cheaper housing and better transport links. So,
well, I mean, the Lower Thames Crossing, which is going to be affecting this site that we're in now, Ashenbank Wood, is sort of going to be a prime example of that. The intention of that project is to relieve traffic congestion on the existing Dartford crossing,
which I think actually I can hear in my headphones. Although it looks beautiful.
Yeah.
There's quite a lot of background traffic noise, so we can't be that far away actually from transport, from big roads.
We're not.
No. So explain to me. You say this particular site, Ashenbank Woods, which is a site of special scientific interest. So it's not just any old woods. This is a really special place. Is under threat. What is the threat here?
So the threat here is partially there will be some loss to the wider SSSI ancient woodland in the area. When you're losing sort of kind of Ashenbank Wood itself is not going to be subject to much loss, although there is a cycle route diversion going through the woods that might impact on some of its special features.
Right. 1 second.
Sure. Yeah, we're going.
We've just turned off the path, so we're just crawling under some trees. I don't quite know why we seem to have chosen the most difficult route. Well, it is beautiful because we've come off the path right into a magic dell.
There we go.
Oh, look, and there's obviously probably some kids have built a sort of camp tent out of fallen branches. Okay, so I understand that this is under threat from development. The development plan, though, is what? What are they trying to do here?
So what they're doing is they're building a new crossing further to the east of the Dartford crossing, but that's going to involve connecting
a river crossing, a tunnel.
Yes, a river crossing.
But it's a tunnel.
Yeah, it is a
so
tunnel.
So why would that? That's great, surely.
Well, the tunnel goes under the Thames,
right?
But in order to connect the A2M2 to the sort of tunnel portal, they're going to be going through a lot of ancient woodland as a result. So just down the way, Clay Lane Wood is one that's going to be heavily impacted by the proposals. Several hectares of ancient woodland lost there. But in terms of our wood itself, you're going to have impacts on some of the veteran trees from some of the works that are required in here. But you're also sort of kind of increasing the traffic around the area on the A2M2. Right. And as you can hear, there's already quite loud background noise from the traffic. If that becomes louder, it further reduces the suitability of this habitat for a lot of species.
So what are you doing?
Well, we're campaigning against it for one thing. So we've been campaigning against it since 2016, trying to bring those sort of impacts down as far as possible. At this point in time, I would probably say that it's unfeasible that it could go ahead without causing loss or damage to ancient woodland and veteran trees. And that's something that we have to oppose as an organisation. So we're working with other environmental NGOs, conservation orgs like RSPB, Bug Life, Wildlife Trust, CPRE, to oppose this scheme.
So, and if people want to keep an eye on the sort of campaigns you're running and the sort of live issues around the country, where can they get that information?
They can go along to woodlandtrust.org.uk/campaigns. And they'll be able to find out about what we're doing in terms of campaigning for protection of ancient woods and veteran trees. we've got a really great campaign at the moment all about protecting ancient and veteran trees, and we're stood in front of one of these at the moment. We call them living legends.
Right. Okay. What a lovely link, because I was going to say, you've brought me to a stand. It looks like a sculpture.
Yeah.
This. So what? So let me just briefly describe this. I mean, it's a hollowed out tree. It almost looks like there's 3 or 4 bits of different trees just supporting each other, and you could go hide in the middle. I mean, I couldn't spread my arms in the middle, but
no.
I mean, almost. There's probably 4 or 5 foot wide in the middle. It's most extraordinary. What is this? What's going on here?
So I would probably say this is an ancient ash tree. As trees sort of going to grow older, they have to sort of kind of allow their heartwood to rot away, because that's what keeps them sort of kind of stable and secure. And in doing so, that creates really important habitat for wildlife. And so this is what has happened to this ash tree, effectively. Its heartwood has sort of kind of rotted away. It's still got this sort of kind of all-important surrounding ripe wood to be able to support the rest of the tree.
That's extraordinary. So,
and it's just
the wood at the centre of the tree, the heartwood, has gone.
Yeah, because it's not really useful for trees at that sort of point. It's no longer the part of the wood that's carrying the sort of water and nutrients up the tree. That's what the sort of kind of outer ripe wood does.
Right.
So the heartwood decays away as they grow older.
And that's just ash trees, is it?
No, that's pretty much all trees.
What,
yeah.
How ignorant am I? Okay, fine. Okay, I didn't realise that happens to all trees, really. And it looks like that would cause an instability problem, but this looks actually fairly stable. It's fine.
It's actually the other way. They do it because it allows them to remain as stable as possible. And I mean, this one, it doesn't look in the best sort of structural condition, does it? But they need to do that for their sort of physiological condition, because if they're trying to support too much sort of kind of heartwood, then it affects the tree's energy balances.
Right.
And I mean that there's actual sort of scientific things
right.
here between the kinetic and the potential energy in a tree and why they do this. But all old trees do it. And in turn, it creates this amazing habitat. So you can see all these little holes in the sort of kind of inside wood and the decaying wood as well, where insects and have sort of kind of burrowed into where birds would be, woodpeckers, will be sort of kind of accessing that as well.
Amazing.
Amazing structures, aren't they?
And so I'm going to meet now one of the people responsible for actually managing woods such as Ashenbank, and he's waiting for me a bit further into the woods.
Okay, I'm Clive Stewart. I'm one of the estate managers for the Woodland Trust working in the southeast.
So what is important about this site? What makes this wood special?
What makes this site special is that it's ancient woodland, or partly ancient woodland, but it's also managed as a wood pasture, or has been managed as a wood pasture in the past. And because of that habitat, it has lots and lots of old trees, and old trees is very important in terms of what they support in terms of dead and decaying habitats. So
we're standing by this extraordinary ash tree. I mean, it's extraordinary that there's an ash tree at all, given ash dieback, but it's extraordinary for all sorts of other reasons. But is ash a big part of this woodland?
In terms of its name, Ashenbank, you think it should be, but it is a component of the site, but it's not. The majority species is not ash. So
what is this site then?
Mostly sycamore, and we're in the northern part of Ashenbank Wood, where we've got a lot of sycamore, and we've got some really big old sweet chestnuts.
Right.
But there are lovely old oak trees and hornbeam trees.
Right. And so when we talk about ancient woodland, it's always worth, I suppose, explaining a bit about what we mean, because clearly people go, well, that's old. But old for trees can be a whole different sort of thing. So what do you mean when you're talking about ancient woodland?
Well, when we say ancient woodland is defined as areas which have been permanently wooded since AD 1600. That's the sort of the
right.
date.
Oh, right.
And if it's,
I didn't realise it was that precise.
Yes, it's roughly when big old estates used to produce maps. Right. So they discovered paper and started drawing maps of what they owned. But before this, the assumption is that if it's wooded then, it would have been wooded ever since the Ice Age retreated, but managed by mankind for thousands of years.
Right. So we're assuming actually that ancient woodland is probably been here since the Ice Age.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's why. I mean, it's worth, I think, pausing on that, because it's why when we're talking about we'll have to destroy a bit of woodland for a road. Sorry. we're talking about taking away a bit of the landscape which has been there since the Ice Age,
yeah.
probably. So that's quite a big deal to have done.
It is, yeah. The other part of Ashenbank, which is the bit we're in, is a more recently wooded area, probably about 200 years old.
Right.
I have a map here, which is not good for a podcast, but I can show you
go
the
on,
map.
go on. We can describe this. Hold on. I'll hold the microphone and you can describe what we're seeing. So, go on, yes.
So we have a map here of Ashenbank Wood dating from 1797, which shows the woodland it used to be.
Right.
Okay. I have another map showing the wood as it is today. So here's a map from a couple of years ago.
Right.
But we're actually up here, which in the 1797 map shows fields.
Right.
And
now
it's woods. But yeah. So basically, what's happened? This Ashenbank used to be owned by Cobham Hall, which is a big estate to the east of Halfpence Lane. So this used to be part of Cobham Hall estate, and in 1790, as many of these big old estates houses used to do, they employed a landscape architect to make their grounds nicer, as it were.
Yes.
So it wasn't Capability Brown, but it's a chap called Humphrey Repton, who worked on this site from 1790 to about 1818 when he died, and he landscaped the estate, and the view from the house over to here, looking west to what is now Ashenbank Wood, was obviously important to him.
Right.
So they actually planted a lot of these big old chestnuts, which we walked past, which date from 200 years ago.
Which is very nice. And we often hear about cutting trees down and looking at old maps going, oh, we've lost all that wood. Here's an example of the reverse.
Yeah,
So actually that's a
yeah.
good nature story.
Yeah, and definitely it is, yes. And as they get older, these trees, there are microhabitats which develop. Rock pockets, branches fall off, they rot, big holes develop. And that's these microhabitats which are home to what's called saprosilic species.
Okay, that's a new word. Saprosilic.
So saprosilics are basically insects and beetles and flies which only exist in dead and decaying wood. Right. So if these big old trees weren't around, they've got nowhere to live.
Right. Which is why it's useful to have dead wood on the ground.
Indeed.
It's not it looks untidy, but actually that's often the richest place.
But often these insects and beetles are actually in the living tree, not in the horizontal dead and dying stuff. Right. And it's the living trees which are why this habitat is so important.
But I thought you said they're living in the living trees, but saprosilic means they're living in the dead trees.
Yeah, but within these big old trees there are these rot holes and pockets and little microhabitats within the tree.
Which are dead, and that's where they live.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Okay, very interesting. Now, there's also, I was told, but I'm completely confused by, an idea that I'm told that goes on here of strapping deadwood to live trees. Did I misunderstand
No, you didn't misunderstand it, no.
Okay, and you're going to show me where this is.
Sure,
All right,
we'll walk there, have a look.
All right, brilliant. So you've taken me to this tree, a very substantial tree, but next to it, this is a bit of, well, you better explain because this is really odd and I don't really understand what I'm looking at.
Right. Well, going back to 1999, when High Speed 1 was being built, they took out 3 hectares of Ashenbank Wood along with lots of other woodland in the area, and fortunately somebody had the idea of suggesting that we could save some of those big trees they felled and re-erecting them against living trees to help them degrade and become part of the habitat.
So, I mean, to describe this, we've got a very big tree. What sort of tree is this?
So you've got a big oak tree.
That's a big oak, and next to it is 30 foot, 40 foot high dead tree.
Yeah.
Bit of bark, but it's not like a small. It's a 40-foot bit of bark.
Yes.
Which you have propped onto the living tree.
That's right.
Why is it better to have done that than just to leave it on the ground?
Well, it's about these microhabitats. So, I mean, it's not just propped up; it's actually strapped to it. So it's actually quite. So you can't.
It's secure.
It is secure. Yes.
That's your health and safety hat on.
We had to make sure it was strapped on.
Yeah.
Okay. But vertical dead or decaying wood is equally as important as horizontal dead and decaying wood.
Is it different? Does it do different things?
Well, the wood doesn't, but it attracts different insects and species. So
really?
that's that's why. So, but in most woodlands, you'll see deadwood as being felled trees
Yes,
which are
on
lying
ground,
or
yeah.
windblown. You don't often see dead vertical trees
No,
because they're often felled and taken out for firewood, that sort of thing. But they are important as a sort of microhabitat for these saprosilics. That's purely why.
So the saprosilics, which are insects which live on dead wood, some prefer the high-rise living of a vertical tree rather than the low-level bungalow type living. But what sort of don't worry if you don't know, but do you know which insects prefer living vertically?
I don't know.
You
that.
don't.
But
Somebody will.
Yeah, somebody will. But if you look at that tree, you'll see there's a sort of U-shaped crook, like 2/3 of the way up.
Yes.
And in that there's a hole which has probably got water in it. So water gathers from rain, and that little microhabitat will be something that will live in it.
Right.
And if that was horizontal, it wouldn't be there.
Well, I think this must be. I mean, we've been doing this for a few years. I've never seen that, so that is amazing. Brilliant. So I know that the history of this site goes back quite a long way, not just the natural history, but the human history as well. And am I right in saying there's quite a lot of sort of Bronze Age heritage here?
Well, we've got a scheduled ancient monument which has been dated to between 2000 and 1500 BC, which is a big burial mound. And it is scheduled, and it's English Heritage monitor it, and we have to make sure it's free of trees and it's there to see.
Wow. And it's interesting you talk about it's there to see, because we came and parked in the Woodland Trust car park, free parking, as is normal in Woodland Trust places. First time, though, a full car park. We are here midweek during the day. I was surprised to see it's full. So talking about visitors, this is clearly I mean, have I just come at a weird time? If they all come to see the Woodland Trust podcast being made, it's a popular site. That always feels a contention to me, because I know you want to encourage people to come. On the other hand, coming in a sort of destroys a bit of what we see. How much of a problem are the level of visitors?
Well, we basically have a path network through Ashenbank Wood, which we maintain, we mow, we make sure it's open and safe. So most people walk on those paths, which steers people around the wood, as it were. So, and we don't stop people from walking off the path, but most people don't, because it's nettles or brambles or whatever. It's difficult to do.
And keeping dogs on the lead and everything like that. You've been with the Trust for a long time, haven't you, really? What sort of change have you seen in the debate around the natural world in your time here?
That's a big question.
Have you? I mean, it assumes you have seen a change. You might not have seen a change. I mean, the reason I ask it is because it feels to me it's gone up the political agenda. That it's not just people dismissively talking about crazy tree huggers and let them onto their own thing. It's become more mainstream. Do you think it's become more optimistic? Do you think it's become more pessimistic? Do you think it's become more informed, I suppose?
Well, I think there's a growing recognition that ancient woodland is a special habitat, but it hasn't quite gone far enough to get total protection. But I think there's a growing realisation that ancient woodland is special and we need to look after it. And I think the politicians probably do understand it, but maybe can't quite make that move to legislate against total protection.
And I think that's part of the Living Legend campaign that the Woodland Trust is organising, isn't it?
Definitely is, yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
Well, there were 2 websites we talked about today. So, if you want to get involved in a local campaign, search for Woodland Trust Campaigns, and you can find out more about the attempts to get better legal protection for ancient and veteran trees by searching for the Living Legends campaign. And of course, I hope you get a chance to visit Ashenbank Woods yourself. So until next time, happy wandering.
Thank you for listening to the Woodland Trust Woodland Walks. Join us next month when Adam will be taking another walk in the company of Woodland Trust staff, partners and volunteers. And don't forget to subscribe to the series on iTunes or wherever you are listening. And do give us a review and a rating. If you want to find out more about our woods and those that are close to you, check out the Woodland Trust website. Just head to the Visiting Woods pages. Thank you.